Oh, hi. Hi. I'm Mr. Chris. Thanks so much for joining us today. This is going to be a great tutorial for you. But first, I think we need a little more light. Let me use my magic wand here. Lumos. That's much better. Today, we're going to be talking about jack-o'-lanterns. Now, typically, traditionally, they've been pumpkins, but not always. I think you're going to really enjoy finding out about the origin of jack-o'-lanterns and also talking about some more modern day different kinds as well. It's going to be really fun. I hope you enjoy.
Have you ever wondered where jack-o'-lanterns come from? Turns out it is much more interesting than you might think. It is kind of interesting, you know? How often do we think about like the idea of carving pumpkins and be like, yeah, that's totally normal? Not so. Turns out the tradition comes from Ireland and Scotland. This is something that dates back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, long time ago. And this tradition was brought over by Irish and Scottish immigrants who came to America and brought their traditions with them. So the name jack-o'-lantern came from wanting to scare away a guy named Jack, who was an unnice guy who was going around and being kind of a trickster. Tricksters happen a lot in mythology and storytelling. Just think about Jack and the Beanstalk or Jack Skellington. There's a lot of Jacks out there, and this one is no different. This one carried a lantern with him to light the way. And people told Jack, allegedly, to scare him away with a spooky, spooky face carved into a turnip. That's right. Nothing's more terrifying than a turnip. It's actually not that satisfying. If they didn't have a turnip, they used a potato, because that's what you do when you're in Ireland. You use what you have. And when they came to America, they started carving into pumpkins because that's what they had here. They had all of these pumpkins in abundance, and they were like, why am I drawing faces on this tiny little thing? I can draw it on a giant thing like this. This is amazing. That's where jack-o'-lanterns came from. Isn't it amazing? Just think about all the different other traditions that we could incorporate into our country if we really were open to everybody's culture. You would get more fun things like this. Today, we're going to demo for you how to carve a jack-o'-lantern a la pineapple. That's right, a jack-o'-lantern pineapple. This is actually how I started to think about the origin of jack-o'-lanterns, because a couple months ago, I was eating a lot of these. I was missing the beach. I really wanted to get a tropical vibe going, and pineapples are a great way to do that. And as I was carving into these things, I thought to myself, you know, there's something about the walls of the pineapple that are very similar to a pumpkin. And I wonder if anybody has ever tried to carve a pineapple into a jack-o'-lantern. And it turns out a lot of people have. There's a lot of different kinds of vegetables and fruits that you can do this with. So let me get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is get a grown-up. This is going to be a lot of sharp objects. So the first thing you're going to need to do is cut off the top here like this. Very good. Nice. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do, you're going to want to hold on to this thing. This is a pineapple corer. This is going to make your job a whole lot easier. This is a specialty item, but once this is in your life, oh my goodness. You press down like this, and then you just start applying pressure, and this gentle
circular saw rotation takes out all the delicious pineapple fruit and leaves the hollow core of the pineapple. This is really great for us because, one, we get to enjoy all the delicious pineapple here, and we get to get a jack-o'-lantern out of it. It can be a little hard to know how far you've gone down into the pineapple. What I like to do is I like to go about halfway down and just test out and see how far I've gone. Look at that. It's gonna be really good. And as I go along, I just put the pineapple aside, and that can go into a delicious pineapple smoothie later. And let me show you what it's doing. Do you see that? Do you see that? This right here, this is the inedible part of the pineapple. This is really, really hard. It's just like, if you tried to gnaw on that, it wouldn't be delicious. It wouldn't be very good. There's also a lot of liquid inside of a pineapple. Lots of juice. When we decide to put a candle inside of there, it needs to be completely dry, or as dry as possible. So I'm gonna take out a little bit more. Keep going where I left off. Ooh, that's a fun sound. Okay, so I've completely hollowed it out, but I still have this hard center right here. I'm gonna need to take the knife and I need to cut it out. Cut it out. This is gonna take a couple goes at it. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Can't eat any of that. Remember, we wanna make it as flat as possible for our little tea candle light. Another thing to keep in mind is that pineapples as jack-o'-lanterns will not be as good for multiple nights like a pumpkin will. These typically have about a 1-night lifespan. So their lives are short, they're very merry, and then they go into the trash. Another thing to keep in mind is that the walls of the pineapple are very thin. They're very fragile. You see that? So when I start applying the knife into there and start sawing, there's a very good chance that the structure of the pineapple might break. So we want to go slow. And it's also a good idea to pick a design for your pineapple that's very simplistic. So I like to do just a happy face like this because it's easiest to be able to carve those shapes. So I'm gonna try that here. See if I can do something. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna carve a circular shape to be the eye. Like that. And then I'm gonna carve another one to be another eye. Yeah. And already I'm starting to see that. I gotta be very careful. I wanna do this fast to not waste your time, but I also wanna make sure. And then he needs a mouth. This guy needs a mouth. Remember, you're gonna want to do this with a grown-up, and grown-ups, be safe. Okay, and now we got a bunch of garbage pieces that need to come out. Yeah, see? We got a little side mouth going, eh? Yeah. Let's test it out with a little tea candle light. First thing you're going to do is you're going to put the light inside your jack-o'-lantern, and then you're going to want to get a little light. Remember, grown-up help. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. There we go. And there you have it. A jack-o'-lantern. Made out of pineapple. Man. So, if you're gonna be wanting to carve a regular jack-o'-lantern, again, this is one of those great things that is best if you have a grown-up with you. But you know what? You can carve your own idea. It's best to come up with a drawing or something like that to think about the different shadows and lights. This is called chiaroscuro, which is a big adult word for the light and shadows of an object. And this is a Frankenstein monster that I came up with. I took a photo, I found a photo online of the Frankenstein monster and had to work out specifically all the areas that were going to be dark to cut out and what areas were going to be light. This is going to be the pumpkin, and it's really important to be thinking about what are the connecting pieces that are, because if you can't just like a regular drawing, you know how when we like draw a circle for the head, if we were to do that for a pumpkin, it would collapse, it would fall all the way out. So it's important that you start off with a drawing to figure out where you're gonna go, and then you can translate that drawing onto the pumpkin. I used a Sharpie. I used a Sharpie to be able to do that. And when you're first starting out, you can erase the Sharpie when it's in the first initial stages. If at a later point in time, you still want to remove it, you can always use a dry erase marker and that will pull it off if you need to. But you're in good hands. So let's get down to carving. Okay. So in carving a traditional pumpkin, you're going to want a couple of tools. Of course, you can obviously have your classic knife with a serrated edge like this. That's what this these little triangles mean. It's also nice to have a bunch of pumpkin carving tools. You can get these at the store, and this is a little bit nicer though. These are made to last a little bit longer than those that you will see advertised. The first thing that we're going to want to do is carve into the top here, and we're going to want to empty it out. Okay, we want to be very careful, and I like to carve on little triangles around the stem, and I do this on an angle a little bit so that when I'm opening and closing it, it's almost like a puzzle piece. When I go to put it back in, I always know exactly the right way to return it to the top. We're gonna want these seeds later. You wanna make sure that your hand can fit inside the pumpkin like this. This is when the scraper will come in handy. But if you don't have this tool, a spoon is really, really good. Once this is finished, you're gonna wanna start carving all of these large blocks. Everything that's in black has to go. But it's a good thing to keep in mind to go for the smallest things first. These are the most delicate, and you're gonna wanna take those out first because the pumpkin is gonna be the strongest when you're carving those out. And versus waiting for those to be the last things, the structural integrity of the pumpkin is gonna be weakened by all of these cuts, these big cuts and everything like that. And we don't want the pumpkin to collapse in on itself. We want to make sure that it's nice and all of these little tiny details are honored on the pumpkin. This looks great. So there you have it. We've got one Frankenstein pumpkin monster, and we also have all of these leftover pumpkin seeds, which you can actually cook. You can prepare them and put them in the oven. You're gonna wanna wash them. Make sure they don't have this spaghetti string all around them. So you will toss this part, the gooky part, and keep the seeds. And once you have these, you can flavor them all sorts of different ways. We like to have a couple of different varieties in the house, so that way you get to try out different flavors. I would love to know what your favorite flavor is. And you know what? You can even save these and grow your own pumpkins, because these are, after all, the seeds to make more of them. So maybe hold on a few and plant them in your garden for next year. That's all for now. I hope this was entertaining and enlightening, and feel free to share some of your pumpkins down below. I would love to see what creative things you come up with, and whatever jack-o'-lantern you decide to make this year is going to be awesome. Take care. Bye.